UFC 300 takes place in a few weeks, and I'm going to go through every single fight on the card today, giving my early prediction and thoughts on what I think is going to happen on the card. It's a very stacked card. You can see top to bottom, guys like Aljo, Yeri, former champs on the prelims. So I'm going to go through every single card and give what I think is going to happen. And speaking of former champs, we got two of them in the early prelim opener. Don't know what happened there. We've got Davis and Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt. I'm not sure why they've made this fight. I know Cody was calling for it. I know they were supposed to fight back when Figgy was the flyweight champ back in lockdown. But I think most people agree. I'm going with Figgy by first round KO. I think Cody's going to start off well, use his speed, use his hands. He's going to be tagging Figgy up quite a bit. I think Figgy's going to be swinging big overhands, just trying to go for the KO. But I think he'll calm down, start fighting a bit more smart, and I think he's going to catch Cody with a big overhand right, which will wobble him, but he'll survive. Maybe might drop him, I'm not sure. But then I think Cody's going to be a bit wobbly, and Figgy's going to come with another overhand right and get the first round KO over Cody Garbrandt, who has been looking better recently, but I do think it's a very bad matchup for him. I do think his chin is gone, and I think Figgy's one of the hardest hitters in the division. We saw in his last fight against Rob Font, he was tagging him, he was rocking him with jabs, wobbling all over the place, and I think it's a very bad matchup for Cody. So I'm going with Figueiredo by round 1 KO in this one. Next up we go to Bobby Green versus Jim Miller. Now, I was originally pretty confident in picking Bobby by decision here, but after how his last fight went, especially with how bad of a KO it was against Jalen Turner, I do think if Jim Miller, who we've seen in a couple fights recently, he's still got power, he's still got knockout power. If he catches Bobby, I think it could be over just like that. But I do think Bobby's gonna be able to stop all the takedowns that Jim goes for, and if he does get taken down, I think he'll be able to get up relatively easily. I do think he'll use his good boxing, tag up Jim a little bit, who is slowing down. He's still looking good, but obviously he's getting older. We've seen him lose a couple fights recently, and I think Bobby's going to be able to stop the takedowns, use his great boxing on the feet, and get a pretty dominant 30-27 decision. But I do think if he gets caught once, it could be over after how his last fight went. Next up, we go to the strawweights. Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez. Andrade, it's a very weird fight in terms of we've seen her have some great performances. The Rose fight where she won last year against Lauren Murphy. But then we've seen her against in fights like Yan Xiaonan, where she just goes in, rushes in, gets caught, gets KO'd. Last year she went 1-3 against all elite competition, but sometimes we've seen her just fight very stupid, and it's cost her a lot of fights in her career. As you see, 25-12. But I do think she's going to win this one against Marina Rodriguez by decision. I think it's going to be a pretty close fight. Rodriguez is very good. She was doing well against Lemos, and then she got caught, and it was a very early stoppage. So if she won that, she might have got a title shot. Who knows? She's got some good wins. I think she'd beat Yang Jianan, who's obviously fighting for the belt on this card. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Andrade by a close 29-28 decision, maybe a 30-27 in there. I think she's gonna use her striking. I think she's gonna land the bigger shots, the more damaging shots. Maybe get a knockdown later on in the fight. But yeah, I'm going with Jessica Andrade by decision. Next fight that was most recently added to the card, Jalen Turner versus Renato Moicano. If this fight had got made for the Brazil card the next month at UFC 301, I would be probably more confident picking Renato Moicano. But having only about a month to prepare for a guy like Jalen Turner, who we've seen in his last fight, his power, his reach, his size is just very difficult for these lightweights to deal with. So I'm going to be picking Jalen Turner in this one by first or second round TKO. Obviously, we've seen him lose to guys like Favola and Gamrot with the grappling, and I think if Moicano can get hold of him and get to the back, I think he will be able to ride out a decision. But I do think with Jalen Turner's power, I do think it's going to take someone else to beat him, and I don't think Renato Moicano on just a month's notice is going to be that guy. So I could see Moicano getting hold of him, getting a submission, riding out to a decision, but I do think Jalen Turner, while he's on the feet, is going to be able to capitalise and just catch Moicano once, drop him, and get the TKO in round 1 or 2. Next, we go to the featherweights. Diego Lopez versus Sadiq Yusuff. I'm going to be going with Diego Lopez by decision. I think we saw in Sadiq's last fight against Barboza. He had a great first round. I think he's going to do the same here. I think he's going to be able to stop all the takedown attempts from Lopez. I think he's going to tag him up on the feet. But I think Lopez's pressure is going to be too much in the end. I think in the second and third round he's going to get a hold of him. I think he's going to land nice big shots, going to get him down, going to threaten submissions. I do think Yusuff is pretty underrated. I think a lot of people say that he's just nowhere near the top of this division. He's had a couple tough losses, Arnold Allen, Barboza, and I think this one again, he's going to start off well, but Lopez over time, the pressure is going to get to him. He's going to win a decision. I do think Lopez is a bit overrated after that Evloev fight. Everyone makes out as though he's like some elite top 5, top 3 fighter in this division. I do think he's good. I think he's going to win this one against Yusuff, who's a great fighter. But I do think after that, we might see Lopez, once he gets to the top of this division, might get a couple losses. We've seen him lose to guys like Brito on the Contender Series, who I think is very good. But yeah, I think Diego Lopez is going to get a close decision here against Yusuff after Yusuff starts to fade later on in the fight, as we've seen a couple times from him. Next up, fight in the women's bantamweight division, Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison. And I think a lot of people agree Kayla Harrison's probably just going to steamroll her. I think he's going to get hold of her, get her down. Holly Holm's like, 42 now? Seen her have some tough losses recently. And I think Kayla Harrison's going to get her down, beat her up, get a submission in round 1 or 2 pretty quickly. That's what the UFC wants in signing Kayla Harrison. And yeah, I think Holly Holm's going to retire, which would be good for her. Retire on 300, former champ, she had a great career. But yeah, I don't think this one's going to go very well for her. I think Kayla Harrison by round 1 or 2 submission. Next up, we've got a very good fight in the featherweight division. Aljamain Sterling moving up, taking on Calvin Kattar. I am going to go with Aljamain Sterling either by decision or late submission in this one. Kattar's coming back after a long time off after that Arnold Allen fight. He had a pretty bad injury. I think he needed a couple surgeries for it. And I think Aljo is going to be able to just take him down like he's done so many times, Yan fight, TJ fight. He's going to be able to stay on their back, and I don't think Kattar's going to be able to do much about it. I do think Kattar, while they're on the feet, is going to be landing some big shots, but I think as soon as Aljo gets him down, takes his back, that's it, the round's done. I think he's going to drain Kattar and maybe in the last couple of minutes get a submission, rear naked choke, but I do think he's going to win a pretty dominant decision, maybe a 30-26 scorecard in there. I think he's going to be a problem in the featherweight division. I think after that, matching up with a guy like Ortega, I think that'd be a great fight to add to the card in the sphere. But yeah, I think Aljo is going to win this one, and it's going to be pretty tough for Kattar, seeing as how his last couple of fights went. That close split decision loss to Emmett, which people thought he won, and obviously the injury to Arnold Allen, and I think he's going to lose this one pretty dominantly to Aljo. Next, we go to the light heavyweights. Fight that should be on the main card over Bo Nickal, but we've got Yuri Prochazka, former champ, obviously lost his last fight to Pereira. He wasn't the champ coming in, but he never lost his belt. Against Alexander Rakic, who I'm surprised is the favourite in this one. There's a couple fights on this card which I'm pretty surprised with the odds. Rakic is coming from over 2 years off after that Yan Xiaonan fight. Also, I think he tore out his ACL in that fight. Pretty bad injury, needed surgery, and yeah, he's coming back. He was supposed to come back in January against Yan Xiaonan, and obviously he's coming back against Yuri Prochazka here. I think Rakic will start off well. We've seen Yuri's fights before. He's constantly throwing big wild shots, getting caught. I think Rakic will win the first round pretty easily. Maybe mix in with the grappling. We've seen Yuri have some trouble against guys like Glover with the grappling before. But I think in round 2, Yuri's just going to catch him with a big overhand right. Just sleepy Rakic. We've seen it so many times in Yuri Prochazka fights. Volkan Oezdemir, he wasn't doing the best in round 1. Round 2 came out, caught him with a head kick, caught him with a right hand, slept him. Which I think is going to happen in this one. I think Rakic is going to start off really well, but Yuri is just going to catch him with one massive bomb, put Rakic to sleep, and they'll be over. I don't think the winner will get a title shot. I think Magomed Ankalaev's next, but I do think the winner of this will fight the loser of the main event, which obviously I'll get to in just a second. Next up, we go to the first fight on the main card. We've got Bo Nickal versus Cody Brundage. I think the odds speak for itself. I think we all know what's going to happen here. Bo Nickal is going to go in there, take Cody Brundage down and submit him pretty quickly. I'm not necessarily mad at the matchmaking on this one. I just don't think it's a main card worthy fight. If Bo Nickal was fighting a guy like Ikram Aliskerov or a guy like Andre Muniz, I wouldn't be so mad. But Cody Brundage, we've seen him lose to guys like Cedric Damas. I think he won his last fight via DQ. And it's just, we need to be giving him top guys. guy's just outside the rankings, especially after this one. If Bo Nickal wins this one, I think we should give him a guy just outside the rankings like Andrade is. Or even a guy in the top 15. But guys like Cody Brundage, they're just clearly not on his level. And yeah, it shouldn't be on the main card over guys like Alger and Yuri, who are former champs. And yeah, I think Bo Nickal's going to beat him round 1 submission. We actually move to lightweights. Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan. Again, the odds on this one. We've seen Charles be an underdog before. He was an underdog against Beneil Dariush in his last fight. Obviously got the first round KO here. And I think he's going to win by KO in this one. I think Arman's going to start off well. Charles is going to come out. He's going to do his flying kick, which he always does. And I think Arman's going to win a couple of the grappling exchanges. I think he'll tag Charles early when Charles is throwing some wild shit. And I think he'll be able to get Charles down. Scrambles in this fight are going to be fucking insane. And I think he's going to throw in submissions against Charles. Charles will get back up, and I think Charles will win most of the exchanges on the feet. His Muay Thai is very underrated. He'll land a couple body kicks, a couple leg kicks, flying knees, elbows, knees to the body. The stuff that Charles usually does, and I think over time is going to have a big effect on Arman, who we have seen go 5 rounds before in that Garbrandt fight, but he did lose the later rounds, which did cost him the fight. I think Charles is going to come on strong in round 2 and 3, hurt Arman bad in round 2. We've seen that happen before in the Silver fight. Arman got caught with a big left hook, was in a lot of trouble. I think Charles is going to land a similar shot. I think he's going to land a left hook, wobble Arman Tsarukyan bad. And yeah, I think late in round 3, Arman's going to be gassed. Charles is going to be landing these to the bodies, flying these. And he's going to land another head kick and just follow it up. Have Arman hurt along the fence and just get late TKO there. Charles Oliveira. I'm not sure if he'll get a title shot because of the next fight, which I'm about to talk about here. But I do think he'll be a very good contender and would deserve it. Obviously, just Islam's not fighting very much. Kind of makes it hard for the division to keep moving. So yeah, Charles Oliveira, round 3 TKO. Next we move to another lightweight fight, which I'm very excited about. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. I'm going with Justin Gaethje by round 4 TKO in this one. I don't think he'll put Max to sleep like some people are saying. I don't think Max is going to come in and overwhelm and win by decision, which I'm seeing a lot of people say. I think the narrative on this fight has switched up a lot. When it first got announced, everyone's saying Justin Gaethje's going to do the same thing he did to Tony Ferguson, to Max Holloway. But as the fight's getting closer and people are seeing how Max looks at lightweight, he looks a lot bigger. Obviously, they did a face-off at the Q&A a few weeks ago, and Max did look a lot bigger than Gaethje. I think that's kind of switched up the narrative on this fight. As you can see, the same height here, both 5'11". I think people looked into that Dustin Poirier fight that Max Holloway had too much, and they saw that although Max was outlanding Dustin nearly every round, he was getting clipped by big shots and hurt. And to be honest, I think that is what's going to happen in this fight mainly. I think Max is going to start off well, but in that first round, Gaethje's just going to catch him with an overhand right. I'm going to make another video breaking down this fight in particular, saying what each fighter's got to do to win. But I think over time, with Gaethje, the leg kicks are going to be a massive factor. We saw it in the first Volkanovski fight with Max Holloway. He basically lost that fight purely because of leg kicks. And Volk's leg kicks are very good, but they're nowhere near as damaging as Gaethje's. We've seen Gaethje win fights purely off beating up the legs of an opponent to the point where they can't walk. They got to switch stances. And he just beats their legs up, lands some big shots, which I think he's going to do in this fight. I think he'll win the first round. I think the second round will be very dominant for Gaethje. I think he'll drop Max. I think it'll be a 10-8, and I think it'll look like... No, be a 10-8 for Gaethje, sorry. I think it'll look like the fight's going very downhill for Max, but I think he'll come back in the third, land some big shots, land left hooks to the body, which will hurt Gaethje. I think Max will win round 3, and he'll start becoming more competitive. But in round 4, Gaethje will fight smart, stick behind that jab, stick behind the uppercut like we saw in the Fizzy fight when he started to get in trouble. And I think he'll catch Max with a nice uppercut left hook, which you've seen him land so many times on so many different opponents. Drop Max, land a couple follow-up shots, and that'll be it. 4th round TKO for Gaethje. But I do think we'll then go on to fight Islam Makhachev. Probably in Abu Dhabi. I think Islam is going to fight Poirier in June, even though I don't want that fight to happen. But I do think that's what's going to happen. And then I think we'll see Charles Oliveira fight. I don't even know, maybe Max Holloway. Max does have a win over him back when they were at featherweight, but I'm not sure. The lightweight division's a bit of a mess right now. And yeah, I think Justin Gaethje by round 4 TKO, and then he'll get a title shot. Hopefully he doesn't retire if he does lose to Islam, because he said he's going to take one more shot at the title, but that is what I see happening. Gaethje round 4 TKO goes on to fight for the belt in Abu Dhabi. Next up, women's strawweight, Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan. This fight is obviously getting a lot of hate. I think everyone's pretty excited for the matchup, just it's not a UFC 300 co-main event. Obviously, they could have done this fight in China. They were planning to go to China at the end of last year. I'm not sure why they didn't. They could have gone to China at some point this year, put this in the main event. 2 Chinese fighters fighting for a world title would have been huge. But instead it's on 300 and it's kind of getting overshadowed by all these other fights here. But I do think Zhang Weili is going to dominate this one. I think it's going to be pretty similar to the Amanda Lemos fight. So he's going to take Yan Xiaonan down and just beat her up on the floor. We've seen that happen with Yan Xiaonan a couple of times. Carla Esparza fight is a good example of that. And yeah, Zhang Weili, I think she's on another level to destroy it. I think she's going to win this, fight Tatiana Suarez, and then go up, and I do think she'll become double champion at some point. She's really good. Yeah, I think she's going to take her down, beat her up on the ground, dominate, 50-44 scorecards all around. And yeah, Zhang Weili via decision. Next up, main event, Alex Pereira versus Jamahal Hill. I'm going to go with Alex Pereira. If this fight was in the Brazil card a few weeks later, I might have a different decision. But obviously, we saw Jamahal Hill say he wouldn't be ready for UFC 300, and then suddenly he's been thrown into the main event. So I do think he's rushed back a bit too soon after that injury he had to his Achilles last year, which I do think is going to play in and become a factor. I think the leg kicks of Pereira are already damaging enough, but I think they're going to become even worse because of that reason. I do think Jamal's going to start well. He's a southpaw. We've seen Alex Pereira struggle with southpaws before. When he was fighting Adesanya, when he was in the southpaw, was landing nice kicks, leg kicks, head kicks, everything. So I do think Jamahal Hill was going to be doing well with the kicks. We saw him against Glover Teixeira landing some big head kicks, which were one of the main reasons he won the fight. I do think he'll land a couple of them on Pereira, lands a couple of body kicks. I think Jamahal Hill will win round 1, and in round 2 the leg kicks of Pereira will start to take an effect, and I think it'll be 1-1 going into the 3rd round. And Jamal's again doing well. Obviously, he's got some great boxing. I do think he's going to shoot a couple of takedowns. I know he's saying he's going to knock out Pereira on the feet, but I do think Pereira will stuff him. I think you'll see him come in, and I think Pereira's going to TK him in round 3 with a left hook. He'll get Jamahal Hill backed up against the fence like we saw in that first Adesanya fight. Land the left hook, wobble him, land a few follow-up shots. Referee steps in. Don't think Jamahal Hill will go out cold, but I do think it'll be a pretty obvious finish, which not many people disagree with. And yeah, Alex Pereira retains his belt. I know he's saying he wants to fight 3 weeks later in Brazil against Macklin and Ankalaev. I don't think that will happen. I do think he'll take quite a bit of damage in this fight against Jamal with the body kicks and the head kicks, and turn around in 3 weeks to fight arguably the best fighter in the division right now. He's got a terrible style to match up against Pereira in Ankalaev. I don't think that would be a good idea. But I do think he's going to win this one, round 3 TKO, and then I think Jamahal Hill will fight against Yuri Prochazka for a #1 contender fight, which I think will be a great scrap. But yeah, main card picks, overall picks, Alex Pereira by KO, Zhang Weili by decision, Gaethje by TKO, Charles by TKO, Nickal by submission, Yuri by KO, Aljo by decision I'm going to go with, Kayla Harrison by submission, Lopez by decision, Turner by TKO, Andrade by decision, Bobby Green by decision, and Figueiredo by round 1 KO. It's going to be an amazing card. Obviously UFC 300, everyone's hyped for it. Yeah, thanks for watching. See you in the next video.